Right, I make it 6 o'clock then. Could I just check with the team we're all good to go? Lots of nods. So let me start then. And welcome again to people who have tuned in. Thank you very much indeed for coming. Here's the first introductory slide. I'm David Munro. I'm Surrey's Police and Crime Commissioner, and I should be introducing this before handing over to the team for a presentation which will last approximately 30 minutes, and then the most important bit, questions and answers. Now, if this were normal times, we'd be in a community hall somewhere in the area, and we'd be there with lots of presentation boards. We'd be there all day and all night, able to answer all your questions in absolute detail. We can't do that, of course, in these current times, but as soon as the national situation allows us to, then that's exactly what we'll be doing. So this is the start of the consultation. It's certainly not the finish. We won't get through all the questions, I'm sure, but we will do our very best to answer them after that. And of course, do write in to me or to anybody else to get your questions answered. Why are we moving? For two basic reasons. Our current headquarters at Mount Brown in Guildford is in the wrong place in the county. It's too far to the west. We want to be in the centre. It's very inefficient, served the force very well for the last 70 years, but it's expensive to run. It's the wrong size, and we can do better. So that's why moving to Leatherhead, and we hope to be there for at least the next 70 years as very good neighbours to the communities. I'd like to reassure you that the sums all stack up. We've had to take out a bridging loan like most people do when they move house, but the money is pretty cheap at the moment, and we will be getting money for the move by the sale of Mount Brown, and also by very considerable efficiency savings as we move to a more efficient headquarters. So the finances are well under control. But I'd just like, before I hand over to the Chief Constable, I would like to say what we're talking about is the move of headquarters and services which are not normally seen by local people. Intelligence analysts, detective work, and so on. Local policing, the police officers and PCSOs you see on your streets and communities, they will still be based locally. We're not talking about them. They will not move, and it's my pledge that they will stay where they are, and I know the Chief Constable has signed up to that, just to make that sure. Now, I think we've got one more slide for me. Oh, no, there was a slide there to explain who I was, but I think I've done that. Anyway, I'm an elected Police and Crime Commissioner, elected by yourselves, the residents. My job is to hold the police force, Surrey Police, to account, and I've been doing that for the last 5 years. So, Chief Constable Gavin Stevens, all yours.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, everyone. Great to see so many people joining us online, and like the Commissioner said, I wish we were seeing you face to face in the local community, and look forward to a time when we can do that. So I'm Gavin, I'm the Chief here. I've been in Surrey for many years. In fact, I've policed in Surrey at every rank, starting my duties as a constable over in the east of Surrey, and stayed with Surrey for the whole of my career. So despite the northeast accent, I've actually lived in Surrey longer than I ever lived in the north, and I've really got a strong affiliation for the county and what this big change means for the future of our county as well. I'm accompanied here tonight by Nev Kemp, our Deputy Chief Constable, and Nev in a moment will take you through a bit more detail around the ambition of the programme. But I just wanted to set the scene as to why we're doing such a big change. We're really proud of our site at Mount Brown. As the Commissioner said, we've been here for 70 years, but it's at the stage now where it's not really capable of fulfilling the ambitions that we've got for the organisation and the plans that we need to modernise. So the world of work is changing about how we do our work. So much more technology now involved in our day-to-day practice and all of our investigations. We work at lots of different locations. We have to make sure that our services are flexible. So it's really important that we have a new headquarters base and a new operating base for the east of the county that is able to support all of those ambitions for many decades to come. Of course, at the heart of our approach to policing in Surrey is a real strong commitment to communities. It's probably been at the centre of my career about investment in neighbourhoods. It's the foundation on which we build the rest of policing. And I really want this new site to feel like it itself is a neighbourhood and also forms part of the wider neighbourhood and your local community too. And we'll be speaking in a bit more detail later in the presentation about how we bring that to life and how we seek your views that this new site becomes an important part of your community and is a good, strong community for us too. So you'll hear a little bit more from me later, but I shall hand over to Nev on the next slide.
Thank you, Chief Constable. Good evening, I'm Nev Kemper, the Deputy Chief Constable. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the building itself, and the new headquarters campus as we're referring to it, because it's more than just a headquarters to us. But you can see on the slide there are a number of areas that we want to make sure that it delivers on. And so I'll work around them in order. So environmental, that's really important to us. The Police and Crime Commissioner and the Chief Constable you've heard from have acknowledged that there is a climate emergency, and Surrey Police has an ambition to be carbon neutral by 2030. That's a really big ask for us, and a key step in doing that will be to have much more efficient, environmentally efficient headquarters. But also we want something that looks really good, that actually adds something to the local community, is something that actually not just we feel proud of as a force, but those that live around it feel proud of and feel proud to have it there. So the design is really important to us, and we'll cover more of that. We've got the architects who are going to present to you, cover a bit more of that later in the presentation. Safety is important, not least because we're a police service, and we have opponents who are criminals, etc. So we need to make sure that it's a safe environment to work in, but also that it's a safe place to store information, etc. And of course, if it's safe for us, it means it's also safe for those that live and work around it. Value for money is very important. The Police and Crime Commissioner mentioned that. We are determined to make sure that every pound counts. And believe me, it's a constant focus of this programme is about getting value for money, about making sure that the places that we're selling in order to help fund it, we get as much as we can for, but equally that the cost of the programme and the new headquarters is kept as low as possible. But equally, part of keeping the cost low means that we need to make sure that it's of sufficient quality that we can get a really good return on it, that we're not going to have to spend much money on maintaining it, that the running costs are as low as possible, and that it doesn't take an awful long time before it's paid for itself. So value is really important. Culture is a very important element of this programme and of Surrey Police. We're very much a team in Surrey. We're a team within the organisation, but we also work closely as a team with partners from Surrey County Council, fire, third sectors, etc. This new headquarters will give us the opportunity to be flexible enough to accommodate people from other agencies as and when we need to do that. Flexibility is a key element of it. But also the design inside it, as you'll see, is very much open plan. So we've taken that as far as we can without compromising some of the sensitive information that some of the teams deal with. But the reason for that is because we have one aim and ambition in Surrey, and that's to keep people safe and to make sure that people feel safe. And we recognise that doing that is a real team effort. And we see that every day with some of the best jobs that we have within Surrey, where we keep people safe and we catch criminals. It's been a team effort that's made that a success. And then I've mentioned collaboration. It's a collaboration with a number of other agencies and companies that are helping us deliver it. But it's also a collaboration with you as local residents in the community. And so it's really important that the process of building this thing goes as smoothly as possible, not just for us, but for all of you, because we're still going to be your neighbours when this is built. We are becoming part of your community. So collaboration with you as well as our partners is really important. And so communication throughout this process is something that we've prioritised. Next slide, thank you. So why have we picked Leatherhead? Well, you'll know, because you're mainly local residents, that it's got a really good central location within Surrey, certainly compared to where we're based at the moment, but it's got a really good road network as well. It's good for officers and staff to be able to get to and from right across Surrey, and also when they have to travel beyond Surrey's borders, as they do sometimes, particularly into the Met or Sussex, where we work closely. So it's an ideal location for us as far as that's concerned. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the transport element. We've already had some questions about parking. So transport, getting to and from the campus is something that is really important, because we want to minimise the impact not just on the environment but on those that live around us. So I'm going to hand over now to Mo Cherry, who's the Programme Director.
Hi there. So how did we get to where we are today? We purchased the site back in 2018, and soon after that the build project was formally initiated. With our design team, some of who will be presenting to you a little bit later, they came on board towards the middle of 2020. So we're at concept design stage just at the moment, and it's fair to say that the master plan for the campus has been evolving over the last 18 months. We really want to put the site to the very best use that we can for the force and indeed for the community. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity for us, and we really, really want to make sure that we get it right. At the moment, we're linking in with Mole Valley District Council Planning Department through the pre-application phase, as you would imagine. And we hope to be in a position to submit a planning application late summer this year, proposing a campus that, pending planning approval, will house our headquarter functions, our Eastern Division operating base, our 999 and 101 contact centre, some key operational units such as roads policing, and we want to introduce some key worker housing onto the site as well for use by the force, and also some other community facilities. The design team will take you through the present proposals, outlining all of how this links together a little bit later. But just to reassure, the site definitely won't house a custody suite nor a helipad. The development is targeted to start on site this time next year, again pending planning approval, and will complete with the force in occupation targeted spring-summer of 2024. It's a really, really exciting project for us, and as I said, a once in a lifetime opportunity. And this is the first step in us linking in with you, our communities, to start to talk about it. We'll definitely be running further sessions, as the Commissioner and the Chief said, as plans progress, to keep you updated. But with that, I'll hand over now to Chris Wilmshurst from Vail Williams, our planning consultants, and he will take you through the next couple of slides.
Thank you, Mo. So the purpose of these slides is to show some of the key considerations that we take into account, which we do through the planning process. So this first slide is showing the constraints, the things we need to take account of through our planning application. So starting at the bottom of the slide there, Cleve Road, we've got the access, is the existing access to Cleve Road. That will take us into the site, and as you know, it will then progress through the site and takes us onto the remainder of the industrial estate beyond. Moving around to the left-hand side of the slide, we've got some private land there, but more importantly, between that and the site is the purple area, which is the flatted development of Parkview Road, so 3- and 4-storey apartment blocks there. We know that they're on the higher land looking down over the site, and they're a key constraint and an issue for us to take into account in any development proposals. Top of the site, we've got the remainder of the industrial estate, so KBR is our nearest neighbour, but also there's a number of other smaller industrial users within the site, all of which take access from Cleve Road leading to our site. taking us off to around the 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock mark on this plan. We've got the school, but more importantly, as an immediate neighbour, we've got Thornton Close. So that's the purple area in the around 3 o'clock on this plan we've got in front of us. So that's a flatted and residential scheme, and we need to address the impact of any proposals upon that, given how close they are. And then finally, along the bottom of this plan, we've got Cleve Road itself. So a residential road, the immediate neighbours on the site above the car park at present. And they're a mixture of houses and bungalows, some of which are quite close to the site. So all things which we take into account through the planning process, all things that have been raised with us by the planning team when we've met with them. So if we look at the next slide, of course, we need to take into account the planning policy context. So this is an extract from the local plan. To note on this, really the blue line is the extent of the urban area. So the site is in the urban area. The land beyond that is greenbelt. Our site is within that pink shaded area, and that pink shaded area is designated as existing employment land, and it's protected for that purpose. That's existing office, industrial and storage uses. If you could look at the next slide now, please. Key for us, key for you as residents, the transport considerations. So parking levels, we have dedicated transport consultants that are working with us on this site. So to establish a number of parking spaces, we need to take into account operational vehicles, they're the vehicles that are owned by the police, as well as staff and visitor parking requirements to get us to a total parking number for the site. We need to take into account the existing access leads through to the remainder of the industrial estate, so we have to maintain that. And one of the things which we think would probably be a local concern is the servicing strategy. So our transport consultants have made sure that any servicing, that could be the refuse vehicles, people turning up, deliveries, turn up at different times of the day, so you don't get a bottleneck with everything turning up at once. Underlying this is quite detailed research which is being undertaken now. We're working in consultation with Surrey County Council Highway team, with Mole Valley District Council, Transform Leatherhead, which is the scheme to improve the environment of Leatherhead Town Centre. We're listening to all the views of this, and we take into account all the comments that have been made, and we're working on coming up with a robust plan to justify the amount of parking provision on site. And the last slide I've got is dealing with the means which we will look at trying to minimise private car usage. So we need to make sure that people have got appropriate means other than using their private car to get to this site. So there'll be electrical vehicle charging points provided on site for staff and visitors. Cycle parking provision will be provided, and showers as well, which is a good way of encouraging people to cycle. There's enhancements as well to encourage people, to encourage staff to use means other than private cars. So that could be travel discounts, links to transport interchanges, and you'll note reference to a shuttle bus there. We're in active consultation with our immediate neighbours to see if there's the ability to provide a bus link from the site to the train station. Car share schemes, that would mean people sharing a car, less cars on the road, and local recruitment. If people live locally, then that gives them the opportunity to walk or cycle to site. All of these are being wrapped up in a specific travel plan. That's a key document which is being produced by our transport consultants that will place commitments on the police authority to encourage sustainable means. That will be subject to the planning approval, and those commitments and the requirements within it will be monitored to ensure that it delivers. Underpinning this is also a detailed staff survey which will establish locations, how people could and couldn't get to site, to make sure we're doing our very best to reduce private car usage. That's the end of my slides. I'm now going to hand you over to Ed at Scott Brownrigg to take you through the detail of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to take you through the design intent and where we are currently at in the design. So if we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the site that Chris has outlined is shown there in red. So we have the existing building sitting roughly in the centre of the site, and then towards the top of the slide, the existing car parking. And there's a building called the Intertech building, which is shown in white on the left. And you can see the housing that surrounds the site in Cleve Road and on Parkview Road and Thornton Close. If we look at the side on the right-hand side, you can see Stokes House at the front of the site, and the Cleve Road running through the access through the site to the commercial spaces on the far end of the site. So if we go to the next slide, please. So we have to think about how we lay out the site and the buildings on that to minimise any impact to external residential accommodation, and also to benefit the police and their operational use. So the building, the HQ building is located centrally. If we look at the diagram on the left, the HQ building is located centrally, with the parking located as shown above that, and that means that the parking is at the lowest part of the site and the building sitting into the contours of the land, and it means that that creates a secure boundary for the site, for the HQ building and parking, so we can have a safe and secure working environment. And then the dotted lines show the routes of the public access through the site to get to the commercial space beyond. And we can see that there's two areas shown in purple, which are for future, for development, and we will talk about those in detail in a minute. Can you go back? Sorry, one slide. And then on the diagram on the right, we can see that what's very key is that we form a green buffer between car parking and those properties that are on Cleve Road and Thornton Close. And so that green buffer wraps around the site. And then obviously there are views beyond through to the historic landscape. Next slide, please. And that shows you that realized in the model. So we built a 3D model to test all of this and to test the impacts and views. So the car parking is sitting there to the top of the site. The main building is a lozenge shaped form in the middle, and then residential accommodation on the bottom left. Next slide, please. Okay, so heights and mass and form of these buildings. So the important thing is that we don't have any visual impact beyond the site. So the building heights are kept down to relatively the same heights as surrounding buildings. So the buildings that sit on the current residential blocks, which sit on Parkview Road, are our driver for the heights of the surrounding buildings and accommodation. So the residential key worker accommodation that we're proposing is 4 stories high, and the office building is 3 stories high. And office floors are slightly higher, so it would be very equivalent in height. Next slide, please. And this is a sectional view, so it shows you as if you're cutting through the ground, and you can see that the buildings at the back are the existing buildings on Parkview Road, and then our new buildings are sitting at very much the same scale and mass as the existing accommodation that wraps around the site. And the building set back quite because it's centrally located within the site. It's set back from any residential properties. Next slide, please. And this is a view from the entrance that's coming from Cleve Road. And so the building sits, as I say, the ground sits down. So the building sits down into the topography of the ground. Car parking sitting beyond that. And we can see this green buffer that wraps around the HQ building, meaning that the public access is set back from the building. We have to provide a safe set-off distance. But rather than having huge fences around the site, we would like to use water. So a water feature at the front will act as effectively a moat, so that you still get visibility, you can still see into the building. It's open and transparent and welcoming, but it's protected by this water feature. The building form and how the building's treated is all about the environmental performance, making sure that the building's efficient, flexible, but also responds to the sun. So we have a building which doesn't require a lot of heating and cooling, which minimises the energy requirements of the building, and therefore minimises the amount of money that has to be spent on running the building in the future. So that's a really key consideration in the design and shape of the building and function of the environmental performance. I'm going to talk slightly to this and then hand back to the Chief Constable, because what's key to us is to provide some community access into this building. So there are elements here which we feel it's very important that the community benefits from interaction with this building and the police in Leatherhead. So what you can see here is a cutaway plan of the ground floor, and the areas circled in red are spaces which can be used both by the police and by the community around. So we have an external and internal amphitheatre space which allows for presentations, public events, gatherings, and really an interaction and collaboration between the police and the surrounding community. Alongside that, we have a series of meeting rooms and spaces which can be used. And obviously we have the cafe and front of house servery area, so that's also part of the collaboration spaces. And I think, Chief Constable, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I'll just say a few more words on this. In my introduction, I mentioned that neighbourhood policing, the community policing, is at the heart of what we do in Surrey, and we wanted to bring that to life in a practical way in this building, because yes, it's a place where colleagues from police and other agencies are going to work, but it's your building. It's a public building. Now, clearly, we can't give you unrestricted access to all of it because of the nature of the work that we do, but we're very keen for some of the facilities to be used by the community for events and social activity, and to interact with us as your local service too. So we were very keen for it to have that sort of welcoming part to it. A little bit later, I'll talk about the sort of campus arrangement and how we might start to get a neighbourhood feel, but be really keen when we get to the Q&A session as well. And as the Commissioner said, there's a formal sort of feedback process after this event to get your reflections on that and what would be useful to you as a local community. And it's important to say, although we're really excited by all of these designs, and Nev, as the Deputy, has been doing internal staff consultation recently, particularly about how the building's going to look inside, none of this is set in stone. We've got the planning process to go to, so it's really important that we've still got time to gather views.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So parking is obviously going to be a big consideration in this building, and we have to provide parking in operational parking and staff parking, and that's contained in a single car park. And what we want to do here is to shield and screen this parking from any residential properties. So there are two parts to that. One is that the car park won't just be open, it's going to be screened with a layer of perforated either timber or materials that you see on the left here, and then it'll be planted, and you can see that green climbing plants which we use to screen over the car park. The car park is a single story above ground, so it's only one deck of car parking above ground, and that's quite a low structure. Next slide, please. And what we're looking very carefully at and developing at the moment, this isn't the final situation, but it's the green buffers between existing dwellings on the right, you can see, and any car parking in the buildings on the left. And it's really important that we create a screen planting between those two for two reasons. One is that we don't want to have any impact on the residential properties, so we don't want car headlights or views for people to be able to look into any residential properties, but also it's quite important for the force to screen their vehicles from sight. So it works both ways, really. Next slide, please. And talking about accommodation then, I think I'm going to hand back to Gavin in a minute, but this campus idea is about providing key worker accommodation on the site as well. And so what we're looking at is providing one two-bed and studio apartment flats on the site, alongside possibly a smaller shop selling essentials that should be open to the public as well, and maybe a laundry facility as well. And so we're exploring that at the moment. Gavin, I think I'm going to hand back to you to.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. We reflected as part of this process as to why Mount Brown has been so successful over the 70 years, and one of the answers to that was that because the site that we're currently on is a campus arrangement, it's got a feel to it that is not just the central building, and we certainly didn't want this just to be an office building that colleagues come to and leave and have no interaction with the surrounding environment. The other key part is that, as we all know, Surrey is an extraordinarily expensive county to live in and to get on the housing ladder. We know the population of Surrey is ageing and lots of young people are leaving. The practical consequence of that for policing and other key services is that many of our new joiners travel really significant distances from out of the county to come and police in the county, and we wanted to give them an opportunity to make a start on the housing ladder. That's the advantage I had when I first started out in policing, and many other colleagues as well. Over the years, the housing stock that we owned has aged, and it's often now occupied by not new recruits because it's not suitable. So this is a really exciting opportunity for us to allow our new recruits to put down roots in Surrey and become members of the local community themselves by providing this accommodation, and at the same time also giving this community and campus feel, which we think will really add to the overall site.
Thank you. And so that finally that shows the aerial view of the campus. So you can see the road that runs through to the commercial space beyond and connects through into Parkview Road. The main building shown in white with its landscape buffers are running around it, and then the main car parking on the right hand side. So that gives you a good idea of the form and scale of the buildings proposed.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the neighbourhood really, and about our communication with you and our commitment to try and be good neighbours. So one of the things that we want to make sure we do is that we avoid there being parking in Cleve Road and the surrounding residential area, and you've heard a bit about the parking provision, but we're also working very closely with an experienced transport consultant. So we've already started surveying staff, looking at where people are travelling in from, and looking at how we can minimise the number of cars that are required to go to the site. So there will be a mixture of operational vehicles there and people's personal cars, but we want to keep those within the boundaries of the site so that the impact beyond that is minimised. Equally, we want to be considerate in when vehicles come and go. So I suppose the good thing about this site is that we're not perhaps a traditional company that works 9 to 5. You're going to have not have bottlenecks of vehicles coming up any one particular time, because there will be shift workers in there and it will be an operational base. And although it's an operational base, just to allay any fears about lots of sirens, etc. all the time, we know that we're within a primarily residential area, and so with the officers and staff working there, and they will take that into account. And furthermore, they won't most of the time be responding to incidents from that site. They will be out and about patrolling Surrey and deploying as they normally would be, and responding from wherever they are. So it won't be that every 5 minutes that vehicles are coming herring out of there to go to different incidents. We will set up neighbourhood liaison forums and have regular meetings so that we can get your feedback and engage with you about how things are going, whether we need to change our plans, to make sure that disruption is kept to the minimum. And also we want to involve you. We want your views on things we could be doing better, and even at this stage, we welcome your views on the design and layout of the building and the site as a whole. As I said at the start, we very much want to be part of the community, and the Chief said that as well, and we are going to be your neighbours not just throughout the bill but permanently. So it's really important that we are good neighbours and that you feel proud to have us there. I think that probably covers that slide. So I'm going to hand over now to James Lacey from Vale Williams, who's going to take questions or deal with the questions. And I think we've got quite a few, 27 already. So James, you're going to dish those out, I think.
Good evening, everybody. Lovely to have so many people on the call, and there's certainly some really good questions which we're going to endeavour to answer. In terms of the questions, we will, as mentioned at the outset, be following up with some question answer document that will come out. So if we don't happen to cover your question, be rest assured that we will address them best we can following this evening's event. There are a large number of questions on parking, so what I'll do is I will take those as I read them. The first question, which I'm going to ask Chris to cover off in our team, was from Karen. As the new site is in a residential area rather than a large out-of-town site, what plans are there for parking for those using the site that will A, not inconvenience the local population, and B, provide protection for the staff and their vehicles? Chris.
So thanks. So parking is a key issue that's been raised, and you can rest assured that each and every meeting we've had with planning officers, councillors, and senior members of the council, parking has been raised as a specific issue we need to be absolutely crystal clear on. So we've got Curtains, transport engineers working with us. They're still working on the number crunching to make sure that the parking provision meets the requirements of the police. And we are certain that we know from our conversations that there's no alternative other than to meet the parking requirement on site, because we've heard from a number of sources the issues facing Cleve Road and the traffic that parks on the road at the moment, and some new residential developments. So the parking provision will be within the site. It'll meet the site requirements for the police, and the intention is that there will be no overspill parking that needs to use Cleve Road, because it will all be accommodated within the body of the site.
Thank you, Chris. Next question I'm going to ask Nev to cover off is in two parts. Part of question for Peter and part of question for Nicole, reference Mount Brown. Will Surrey Police be at liberty to use the proceeds from the sale of Mount Brown to support its operational services? And an allied point, will Mount Brown be used in the future by Surrey Police Force?
Okay, thanks, James, and thanks for that question. So the sale of Mount Brown is going to help fund this programme, and the building of the campus, well, particularly actually the headquarters building that you've seen. It's not going to be used to fund operational elements of policing, because it's capital revenue. So we need to use it for sort of structural things, and you'll appreciate this is quite a big undertaking for us. So one of the ways that we could keep the amount of money that we borrow down to a minimum is to use the money that we receive from the sites that we're selling, of which Mount Brown is the biggest and most important, to help fund it. And will we still use Mount Brown in any capacity? Possibly. We may retain a small part of it. We're still looking at that at the moment for things like occupational health and possibly an immersive training facility. We haven't made a final decision on that, and obviously anything that we do retain means there's a little bit less that we're selling, but that is a possibility.
Thanks very much, Nev, for the answer to that question. That we've had several questions in relation to aspects that will be included in development in its construction, whether that be certain systems, R&D systems and such like, which we will have a contractor on board in due course, and we'll by all means mention those in the written answers following this session. The next question from Neil is, has consideration been given to access to the site being through Springfield Drive, that is exclusively business use, rather than Cleve Road, that is predominantly residential use? Mo, if I could ask you to cover that one, please.
Thank you, James. Yes, we have been looking at alternative accesses onto the site and off the site. There are two other access egress points on the site, neither of which that we have a right of way over just at the moment. But we would like to start to talk to some of our neighbours to see if there's any possibility of us using those out into the future. So yes, that is something that we're actively looking at.
Thanks very much, Mo. Could I just check? I've just altered my sound settings. Just wanted to check if that's any better.
Bit better, isn't it?
Yeah, it's better, James.
Thanks very much. Okay, next question is, I'd like to know of any impact of your new headquarters on the nearby blocks of flats, Parkview Road, and that is from Alan. Ed, would you like to take that one?
Thank you, James. Yes, very careful considerations being given to the position of buildings around Parkview Road. Obviously, Parkview Road has a view out onto the site at the moment, and there is it has an area which is already designated as a no-build zone, and we're not going to build anything in that. That will be retained as parkland, so those flats will still look out onto that parkland area. And then all of the residential properties and the buildings themselves will be kept well back from Parkview and maintain the correct distances. And that's certainly something we're in discussion with the local authority about at the moment as we develop the designs.
Thanks very much, Ed. There's been several questions around the availability of a site plan. We will make this session available afterwards and the slide pack, so they'll be available together with future consultation events, engagement events, as mentioned by the PCC just earlier on. A question now, which I'll post to Nev if I may. There used to be a police station in Leatherhead, but it got removed. Was that previously an HQ or a station? And isn't there a police station in Leatherhead at current? Will that current station stay?
Okay, thank you for that. I don't know whether there's probably one for the Chief Constable because he's been part of Surrey for longer than I have. I don't know whether it used to be a headquarters. Gavin, can you answer that point?
Now, Leatherhead was never, so to explain the sort of structure of police buildings, we have sort of county level headquarters buildings, and then we sometimes refer to divisional headquarters. So Surrey has 3 divisions, east, west and north. So, for example, at the moment, Reigate is our eastern divisional headquarters. So the Leatherhead one was never a headquarters building. It was a local community station, but also housed some of our specialist functions as well. So, for example, quite a few years ago, I used to run a serious and organised crime team that was based at Leatherhead. The serious and organised crime team is based elsewhere now, but would form part of the new site that we've talked about this evening. As the Commissioner said at the beginning, there's a commitment in every borough and district for us to have our neighbourhood policing base as well. It's really important that we have our neighbourhood policing teams in all 11 boroughs and districts across the county. And we're currently looking at what will be the best location for Mole Valley for the neighbourhood base.
Great, thanks very much, Gavin, Nev, in relation to that one. If we could now move on to the question from Nicole, which is partially answered earlier, but for the avoidance of doubt, perhaps, Mo, you'd like to take this one. What's the exact purpose of moving the HQ to Leatherhead?
Ooh, maybe not me best to answer again. I'm going to pass over to Derek.
Yeah, so, well, there's a number of reasons. One is that the headquarters that we're at Mount Brown in Guildford at the moment is really difficult to access. It's in the wrong place. It's right over at one extreme of the county. It's also hideously expensive and the costs are only increasing. So to maintain it and upkeep it is becoming more and more expensive. It's very old, a lot of the buildings that are there. Environmentally, it's really poor. We'd never, ever be able to meet our environmental commitments if we remained there. And we also can't put teams together working in the collaborative way that we'd like. So to give you an example, we can't even have on that site our controllers who take the calls on 999 and 101 when you ring them in the same room as the officers and staff who dispatch officers to incidents. And sometimes it's really good, particularly if you've got some difficult or challenging incidents running, to have them in the same room. We can't do that on that site. This new site will tick all of those boxes. So that there are a number of really important reasons as to why we're moving there, and it's also going to allow officers and staff to work in a more agile way, which is also important to us.
Can I just add a little bit to that as well? I mentioned it at the beginning, but as a big employer and as a police service, we've also got to look towards the future in the way that our services are changing. So how our forensic laboratories are changing, how our digital forensics work is changing, the nature of the way that we run investigations, all of that requires new facilities and new flexibility for how we work, and it's just simply not possible on the outdated site that we've got, which is why this is a big investment for our next half a decade or so.
Thanks very much, Gavin, and not to let Nev off too soon from the questioning. The next one from Ian: are there plans to move Reigate Police Station as well?
Yeah, so thanks, Ian, for that one. So Reigate is going to be sold, but there is going to still be a police provision within Reigate. So as the Commissioner said right at the start, there is going to be no change in terms of the deployment of officers and staff. So you won't notice any difference in terms of the policing of Reigate, and we will still have within Reigate a police office, if you like, that people can walk into and interact personally with a police officer or member of police staff. What we'll be moving, because we're selling the Reigate building, is the sort of divisional headquarters element and some of the investigative functions, etc. They will be based at this new site, so at this new operational base. But you won't notice any difference in terms of the policing and police presence within Reigate. That's an absolute commitment and red line that we've got with this programme.
Thank you very much, Nev, for that particular one. The next question is for David Monroe, the Police Crime Commissioner. If the move leads to efficiency savings as claimed, then can we expect our council tax to go down or even rise a bit slower? David.
Thank you very much for that. The short answer is, other things being equal, yes. Improved efficiency means you get more for your money, and that means lower taxes. But I have to say, who knows what the financial situation is going to be over the next few years. More important is the balance of the money that police get. Next year it's going to cost £262 million to run Surrey Police. Surrey is unique in the country. 55% of that money, over half, comes directly from the council taxpayer, and 45%, it's still taxation, there's no free money, but it comes through a central government grant. And Surrey, I'm afraid, is right at one end of the spectrum. Most other forces get most of their money through the central grant. I think that's unfair. I'm allowed to say that. We're working with government to say this is unfair on the council taxpayer, and we think there should be a lower proportion there. We're going to have to wait for a fundamental review of police funding, but I assure you we're on the case and making the case as best as we can. I hope that answers the question. Very contentious, council tax. People want low taxes, so I do. People want a brilliant police service, and sometimes those two objectives are in conflict.
Thank you very much, David. The next question, two parts to this because I'm linking the questions, and Nev, one for you, is Neighbourhood Watch. This is from Deborah. Neighbourhood Watch Mole Valley. Will they have a place on the new campus? And an allied question that links nicely is just to talk about the potential community use of parts of the campus.
So it's a lovely question because we value Neighbourhood Watch, and I'm hoping that Neighbourhood Watch in that area is going to be better than ever, with up to 1,900 people coming and going from that building. But absolutely, so Neighbourhood Watch would be most welcome, and the building and facilities are flexible enough to allow that. So and we value what Neighbourhood Watch do. What was the second part of your question, James? Sorry.
it was just a comment on the potential community.
Yeah. So so I suppose that leads neatly into how we can open up the headquarters building for communities and community use. So one of the things it's going to have is a sort of lecture theatre, if you like. It will be used for things like police briefings, etc. But equally, it's going to be in a part of the building that we can allow to be used, booked and used by community groups, etc. if required. Equally, the entrance to the building, there will be what is effectively a public area with refreshments, etc. It will be a very welcoming building, not a sort of austere, foreboding place. And we welcome people, members of the public, to come in there. As the Chief has said, and the Commissioner, we want to be very much part of the community, and we can do that without undermining security. We're absolutely confident of that. You know, we can be part of the community without undermining security, because there will be lots of parts of the building, of course, that people won't be able to access. But absolutely, in relation to Neighbourhood Watch, that's something we'd welcome accommodating.
Could I come in here? We had a big competition. I think six architectural firms were competing to build this. This happened a year ago, and what, from my point of view, why I thought Scott Brownrigg was the best. They had a building which actually was accessible, and it drew you in. So a lot of their competitors had buildings which I'm sure they would have worked in policing terms, but boy, did they look forbidding from outside, and you just wouldn't want to go through those doors. So that's what swung it for me. Scott Brownrigg also has lots of experience, and they came up with a decent price too.
Thank you very much, David. A question from Carla. You said that you want the campus to be carbon neutral by 2030, but how are you intended to achieve this? Ed, would you like to pick that one up?
You're on mute, Ed.
Thank you. Sorry. There's two parts to this. First, we have to design buildings which require the least amount of energy possible. So that's called passive design. So designing buildings that don't overheat, that don't get cold in the winter is really key to that. And then once we've done that, we look at renewable energy and energy sources. So it's about finding ways of building buildings which, number one, use the least amount of energy, and number two, maximise the amount of renewable provision for energy requirements. So there's two. So part of that's architecture, and the other part of that's the mechanical and electrical services. And so those two things have been worked together at the moment, and the building's very much about that, maximising its energy efficiency and minimising its energy use. So under development, but certainly a big driver for the design.
Thank you very much, Ed. A question from Michael for Nev. Do you think you will be able to recruit replacements for the staff who will not move to this site?
That's a great question. So we do know, Michael, that some of the staff won't want to move to the new headquarters building. So on the upside, they've got plenty of time to plan for that. But we also know that it's a great area to recruit new staff into, and the catchment area is great. You know, you can get there quite easily from parts of London, from Kent, from Sussex, and from Surrey. So we're quite confident that we will be able to fill any vacancies that there are, and we can do it in a planned way, because the programme is, you know, we're not planning on being at the site until April 24. Also, it does give us an opportunity to you know, bring in some new and fresh people into the organisation, which of course will be made a little bit easier because of, if we do get the planning permission, because of the accommodation that we're providing on site. Because one thing that we do find expensive as an organisation is that we recruit and employ people, and they then transfer or move on somewhere else. And there's two things that this site should help us do in that regard. Firstly, it's going to be a great place to work, so which will help attract and retain people in what is a very competitive county for us. But also because we can provide some accommodation to help people put down roots, they are more likely to stay with us and stay with the organisation, and that in itself brings in efficiency. So we're actually quite optimistic about that picture. Thank you.
Jim, could I just add a brief word to that as well, in that as the Chief, I've sort of set an ambition that I don't want anybody to leave our employment as a result of this move, but I'm realistic that some will choose to do so. However, the last year has taught us that we don't always have to be in the building all the time. This new headquarters allow that agile working processes, and I'm sure some colleagues will be able to stay because they'll have that increasing flexibility to the way they work. And that also goes towards, James, I don't know whether you will come back to David's question on the technology, who was asking about links with research departments at Surrey University in Southampton. In Surrey, we have an evidence-based policing group, which has links to all of the sort of key universities that we work with in the local area, but also those universities that support our degree apprenticeship programmes. We're also part of some national police programmes. There's one called the National Enablings Programme, which is making sure that police forces get access to the best technology, but negotiated at scale nationally. Of course, we don't have huge private sector style budgets for tech investment, so we do have to negotiate as a block, as it were, in policing. But if David's got any contacts behind that question that he wants to share with us, more than happy to follow up on those, because I'm personally very interested in how we get the best technology into policing. So that's that question too.
Thanks very much, Gavin, for that. We have mentioned, but just for clarity, Nev, roughly what will the total number of staff who will be working at the new HQ be?
Yeah, it's about. Oh, we're muted. No. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me all right, James? Just checking. Yeah, great. Yeah, so about 1,900 staff in total. They won't be there all of the time. So, I mean, it's a good prompt by the Chief, actually. If one thing that the awful pandemic has done is it's really supercharged our agile working and flexibility. And we have a lot more officers and staff now working more agilely. A lot more have laptops than they did a year ago. And actually, we don't want all staff to be there every day. There are some teams that will have to be there every day because of the sensitive nature that of the work they do, but the majority don't. But there will be a capacity for 1,900 if it was absolutely full.
Thanks, Nev, and an allied one from an anonymous attendee. If operational officers are based at the HQ, including road policing, how can it not be Blue Light Response Centre?
Yeah, so it is a good question. So if you take roads policing or firearms officers, because they'll be operating from there as well, some of them will be starting their shifts there, particularly the firearms officers, because they need to get their equipment and that needs to be held securely, etc. But once they've done that, they leave, and their job, both those two teams are very proactive. So when they're not deployed to something, the expectation is that they're spread around the county and that they're undertaking proactive police duties, supporting other teams. And when they respond to incidents, they'll be responding from wherever they are. So there will be times where at the start of a shift, perhaps they may need to respond. And the direction that I will give them and that the Chief Constable will give them is that they need to do that in a sensitive way. And they know that, because if you look at where our police estate is now, we have firearms officers responding from Burpham at the moment, right in the middle of a housing estate. And there are no problems there at all. I mean, they're much more tightly packed in than and much more close to houses than this campus setup will be, and they're well used to that. They're good neighbours, and there isn't a problem. So I really can hopefully allay your fears on that point.
Thanks very much, Nev. A question for Chris. There's a number of similar questions here in relation to road movements and anticipated flow of traffic, Chris. Kelvin, Neil have similar questions. If I just take those, I'd be concerned about increased traffic to the west of the site towards Cobham and Oxshott, where the roads are small country lanes. What reassurance can be given that movements in and out will use the larger roads to the north, east, east and south of Leatherhead? And sort of allied really from Neil, what's the anticipated additional traffic flow on Cleve Road in number of vehicles per day? Chris.
Thank you. I suppose that on one point of view, this is work in progress. So part of the consultation that is being undertaken by our transport consultants is to establish the precise numbers of people who attend the site and how they may attend the site if they come by car or other means. That process will enable an actual figure to be given to determine how many people visit the site. In terms of what route they take, there's absolutely nothing stopping us through the travel plan or through advice to staff looking at means of educating people, the staff, the best routes to leave. And I suppose we have to bear in mind it's not always going to be a 9 to 5 route, so there won't be bottlenecks with people all leaving at the same time. And the most efficient route out of the site would be to use the main roads rather than the narrow roads. And I think an education process for staff to make sure that they're aware of, the most suitable routes for them to take is perfectly plausible. So work in progress, good question, all things that we will take into account, and certainly our transport consultants will take into account to deal with the proper concerns that residents have about traffic on their local roads.
Thanks very much, Chris. One for Ed in relation to neighbouring amenities from several residents. There have been comments regarding the current flats and what the impact is in terms of noise and also view from those flats. Just wondered if you could comment on that relationship point, Ed.
Yes. So from the flats overlook the site most are the ones that are on Parkview Road, because they're the highest part of the site, and they're 4 stories high, overlooking the site. So we have to maintain a very generous offset distance. So I can't say you won't be able to see new buildings. You will be able to see them, but they'll be set well back, and they will have open space between the existing flats at Parkview Road, especially the ones that look directly onto the site. So there's an open space allocation in front of them, and then the buildings sit very far back. So I think it's we're talking about in the region of 38 metres or so. So that's under development at the moment. But yeah, absolutely a massive consideration for us. And equally, the properties on Fulton Close and Cleve Road that overlook the back of the site, we have to set this green buffer is very important. That's being developed at the moment. And each of those views will be tested and demonstrated in the planning process. You'll be able to see exactly what the impact will be and what will change in the view. But at the moment, a lot of these properties are looking at car parking and at existing buildings of a similar scale. So, we have to balance those two things, make sure that we make it. I think what we're going to see is an improvement as much as is possible on the site.
Thanks very much, Ed. Robert and a number of others, including the Residents Association, have asked questions around demolition, contractor access, noise, dust and disturbance generally during the construction process, which I'll take. The contractors that we've been talking to will be and are reputable contractors, and they will comply with the considerate contractor scheme. We will also be proactively submitting a construction environmental management plan in with the planning application that will outline all of the things that we would expect to comply with during the process of the construction period. Unlike other schemes that some have seen, that will actually set and be a reference document in the planning application should members approve the application. So that will set down all of the key points. And as mentioned earlier by others, at the end of the day, the police are going to be in close proximity, and this is a future neighbourhood to you. So we want to be considerate, work with you, and there will also be liaison and various forums in order to give feedback. So it's a very good question, Robert and others. Question now from Simon, and perhaps Ed, you could take this one. What are the proposals for site security, such as fencing? Then the second part of the question is, what is our target BREEAM rating for the scheme?
Thank you, James. So I'll do the BREEAM first. It's going to be a BREEAM excellent building. That's what we're aiming to achieve, and so and that's it's a very high BREEAM rating. And
could you explain what BREEAM is, please?
Yes, sorry. BREEAM is the environmental research establishments rating system, and that means that and what that's about is a measure of the environmental performance of the building, and there are ratings from fail, pass, good, excellent, and outstanding. Outstanding is very hard to achieve without having a timber structure and other things. So BREEAM excellent is a very high rating, and that's what we're aiming to achieve on this. And then, the second question, James, was?
It was around, I suspect that it was in the same question, it was directed around the fencing. Perhaps first thing is building, and then second thing is the future, perhaps.
Yeah, so screening and fencing. So the HQ building and the car park need to be have a degree of security, and that will mean that we have to have gates, and we will have a degree of fencing. That has a green. We have a green planted landscape area to put that in, and we will hope to screen and make that very, very softened by landscaping. And then we're using water rather than fencing at the front of the building, so we have this open and approachable aspect to the building. We're not wrapping it in a huge protective fence. So it's very much about providing a degree of security, but providing an open and welcoming aspect to the building.
Thank you very much, Ed. One for Nev. How can you ensure public and police protection in the public areas when you're welcoming anybody to enter the building as an anonymous attendee?
Yes, so thank you. We're pretty confident we can do that. I mean, there will be security within the building in terms of CCTV, etc. But of course, the building is full of people that are trained in being vigilant and in spotting anything that is untoward. So in that regard, it's a pretty safe place. And
I think we've lost Nev's sound, or I've lost Nev's sound anyway.
Appear to have lost Nev midway. Okay, perhaps we'll come back to that one.
Security, and we're not.
Nev, can I just interrupt? We lost you there for about 40 seconds.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm not sure what you didn't hear, but this new building is going to be a lot more secure than our current arrangements at Mount Brown, and it's also we're pretty confident that we can interact with the community. We do it all the time, every day, at locations all across Surrey, without there being any particular problems. And it's more important to us that we are part of the community and invite the community in. We can do that without compromising security. As Ed said, vehicles won't be able to get close up to the building. People that come into the building will only be able to access certain areas. And that is more than sufficient to keep it secure.
Thanks very much, Nev. A further one for you from Nick. How will you handle the challenge of emergency police vehicles access from the HQ to the Trunk Road network and M25? It looks like you'll be in the wrong place.
James, I lost you halfway through there. Could you just repeat?
Should I pick that up, James? Because I heard it okay. So, I guess coming back to Nick's question, everything's comparative, Nick. We're definitely in the wrong place at the moment. and have to manage these issues, the Leatherhead site will be a much improved position for us. And we've said a number of times during the presentation this evening that the teams are not always responding from this base. They respond from other areas around the county and when they're on patrol. But in terms of the sort of strategic positioning of the headquarters compared to the bases we've got now, it's a much improved position. Although I do take your point about it's not a perfect solution, but then again, in our site for different searches across the county, this was by far and away the best solution for us.
Thanks very much, Gavin. Question are posed for Chris now, highways related. Cleve Road is relatively accessible from Randalls Road, but from the Kingston Road end, it is totally unsuitable and incapable of taking significant extra traffic. There is also a lot of on-road residential parking, which makes two-way traffic difficult. How will you enable Cleve Road to take this extra traffic? And this is from Robert.
Yeah, so we've heard a lot about Cleve Road, and I've also, well, the team's been alerted to the roundabout junction that's just been referred to. So these are all matters that will feed into our transport consultant. So clearly, you know, people will travel to the site by car, despite our best endeavours to stop as many as possible. So this will be a case of looking how many people are coming, when will they arrive, and managing that process. And the transport consultants work hard on that. We can't hands up say nobody will use Cleve Road, but there are measures we can try and encourage people not to use it, and perhaps through not all turning up on the same time or in rush hour, spread throughout the day, that the impact might be limited. But certainly good points, and ones that we really have not missed, because we are told of this issue, each and every person we speak to. So absolutely, I know our highway consultants are listening to that and these questions, and they'll be relayed to them. So these will all be taken into account fully, rest assured of that.
Okay, the next question, there is one about construction process from Mike, which I'd like to come back to Mo, but I'll do a comms check in a moment with Mo and the team in the office. Could I go now to the next one for, bear with me. Ed, can you answer this one, please? Will the on-site accommodation just be available to police staff, or will it be open to the general public? Actually, it's one for Gavin. Apologies. Just checking my orders.
Yeah, no, thanks, James. I'll take that. So predominantly to police officers and staff, but there may be options for other key workers. The strategy around the housing is still to be developed. So if people on the call tonight have got comments and questions on that, please do put it back on your feedback form.
Thanks very much, Gavin. Hopefully one now for Mo, if they're back in the room. This is from Mike. Can you please advise further on the impact of the actual construction programme?
So we are hoping, as I said earlier, to make a start on site just about this time next year, actually. We're just about to, probably by the end of April, we should have a contractor on board. And we specifically wanted to bring a contractor on board early, so as we could work with the contractor to really understand the logistics of how he was going to manage the site, and be able to minimise any disruption whilst we are constructing. We know that there will be disruption, of course there will be. We're demolishing quite an extensive brick building that's on the site at the moment, and we're building in the region of 9,000–10,000 metres squared of new building and an associated car park. But having that contractor on board early, at this very early stage of the concept design, is going to be really beneficial to us. So throughout the 2 years of the build that we are on site, we will be linking in with local neighbours and residents. We're going to be encouraging the contractor to have a meet the residents session, so as any queries, concerns can be fed back to the contractor incrementally right throughout the build. And by the time that we finish in spring, summer 2024, and all of the disruption has gone away, hopefully what will be left on the site will be something that everybody can be really proud of.
Thanks very much. I am trying to work through chronology the questions, and conscious there are still questions coming in As mentioned at the outset, don't worry if your question isn't taken. We will cover it off in the question answer document following the session. The next question, if I may, to Nev: will all of the services currently located at Mount Brown be transferred to the new HQ location?
Not necessarily all of them, but most of them. So there are some that are going to have to go elsewhere. So there's a dog training school at Mount Brown, which has got a very proud 70-year history, and it's no exaggeration to say it's got a world-renowned reputation. We have officers come and train dogs there from Asia. And all over Europe, as well as our own dog handlers. The new site is not suitable for that, so we're looking to somewhere else in Surrey to put the dog school. There's also the new site is not really suitable for covert officers, so they're going to be working from somewhere else as well. And as I mentioned before, there's the possibility of some very small teams from our training department and occupational health, perhaps remaining at Mount Brown. But apart from that, everything else pretty much is going to be at the new headquarters.
Thanks very much, Nev. One for Mo or Nev perhaps here from anonymous attendee. What opportunities do you see for the local children and schools?
I would really like to work with the local children and schools. We've already talked about asking the local community and the local schools to enter a competition to name the new HQ building, which I think would be really interesting. We do want, and we've been linking in with our potential contractor, to be offering up apprenticeships. I know that's for slightly older children, but we do want to be working work experience, apprenticeships, and really working with the primary school children as well to educate them in construction. It's a really interesting thing, building, seeing diggers and dumpers and all sorts of things driving about sites. Kids get really excited about it. So yeah, we're really keen to work with local schools.
Thanks, Mo. Question direct to Ed, if I may. What is the number of car parking spaces, and does that include parking for those living on site in the accommodation?
So there are two elements to the car parking. There's the car parking associated with the HQ, which has operational vehicles and vehicles for staff, and that's in the region of 550 spaces at the moment. It's under review and development. And then there's car parking for the accommodation, which is over 1-to-1. So we're looking at maybe in the region of 100 units, 100 flats, and maybe 110 spaces. So, and that's completely contained underneath those buildings because the ground slopes away. It's in what they call an undercroft parking. So it doesn't, you don't see it on the surface, but it absolutely meets the requirements of the accommodation. So there's no risk of people parking elsewhere.
Thanks, Ed. Two questions if I may to Nev. I might up the ante here, Nev, and do two at once if I may. From anonymous attendee, different questions. What is the impact on policing in Reigate and Banstead with the plan to close Reigate Police Station? The first. Second, where are we planning on locating the road police unit bases, the RPU bases on the site?
Okay, so in terms of policing Reigate and Banstead, the impact will be, there won't be an impact. So the public partners won't notice any difference in terms of how we police it. In fact, for the last couple of years and for the coming year, Surrey Police is growing in terms of its operational officers. So if anything, you'll see small improvements perhaps. Because for the 10 years preceding that, we were shrinking. So there's generally a good news story there. And we will make sure, as I said before, that there is provision within the Reigate area for police officers or police staff to be based. We haven't identified exactly where that is at the moment, but that is a commitment that we've made from the start, is that there won't be any shrinkage from any of the towns or places where we currently have a police building that is accessible to the public. So that will continue, and the way that officers and staff are deployed will be the same. And the second question, I knew if I didn't write it down, I would remember it. Oh yes, Roads Policing Unit. That will, where in the building will it be based? Off the top of my head, I'm not actually sure. But we do know that, don't we?
We do know that.
Yeah.
So there will be accommodation for workspaces for the Roads Policing Unit up the ground floor of the building. But the main operational bit will be in what we're calling the auxiliary building, which is a small bit of the ground floor of the car park, where we're having more sort of functional things that don't fit nicely and neatly within a office type accommodation. So that's where the actual Roads Policing Unit vehicles and kit will be based.
James, could I just butt in here? We're running over time now. We said we'd stop after 45 minutes. There's been lots of questions. The number of participants are leaving now. Could we give people an indication of how long we're going to go on for? Another 10 minutes, say?
Yeah, another 10 minutes was the brief I've had back in. Is that fine with you, David and team?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's fair to people who have tuned in. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Question, if I may, on solar panels and the like, to you, Ed. Will all of the buildings have solar panels on the roofs and storage batteries so they could generate their own power and lead to less CO2?
Certainly, that solar panels and PV, photovoltaics is definitely a big consideration, and we're looking at all versions and all options for renewable energy supply on the site, and it's part of the overall strategy of the building.
Thank you very much, Ed. Question from Lisa, Mo and Nev perhaps. Will you be including nursery childcare provision?
So that is something that we're looking at, and we haven't made a final decision on at the moment. There's lots of elements that are attractive about it, but there are some downsides as well. So one of the attractive elements is that it makes particularly working parents' lives a bit easier, helps with the work-life balance. It increases people's loyalty to wanting to work for a particular organisation that isn't, and it not just being about money or something like that. There isn't any police force that does it in the country. We'd be the first if we did it, so we're having a good look at it. Some of the downsides of it are that it attracts people into work at the headquarters who may otherwise be able to work elsewhere or agilely, which is a concern, and there is quite a big cost element to it as well. And the other thing is, of course, officers and staff in Surrey Police still will be working across the county, and it means that all the provision would be in one place. So we are looking at options as well to link in with providers to possibly help with across a number of sites across the county. That's another option that we're looking at, or to link up with a local provider close to where this campus will be to see if they can help us with provision. So we're doing a lot of work on that at the moment, and we haven't reached a final decision, but it is something that we're considering.
Thanks very much. There's a question here to Mo, perhaps. Are you interested in collaborating with neighbouring large employers on travel initiatives or net zero or skills development training, etc.?
Absolutely, and we've already been in contact with some of our neighbours on the ERA commercial estate to look at how we can collaborate better, and there's an immense amount of opportunity for us out there, so that is something that we actively do want to take forward.
Thanks, Mo. Question for Ed. Will the police residential properties be able to see into the flats in Parkview Road that face the site? Privacy concerns as our balcony and windows overlook where the residential buildings will be. This is from Nick.
Thank you, James. No, in the what we've done is that we've set those buildings as far back as possible. So there's obviously beyond a certain distance, there isn't a risk of overlooking, and we have gone beyond that distance to ensure that there's no risk of overlooking between either flats or the other buildings. So it's about offsetting the buildings as far as further than is recommended to ensure that that doesn't happen. So.
Thanks very much. Mindful it's 25 past, so a few more questions now. I've got a question here. Perhaps Chris, you could pick this one up. Flooding is an issue on Cleve Road. We've had two questions on this actually. How will you ensure that the development does not increase this problem? And the other part of the question is, with the flooding risk issues in Leatherhead town centre, how do you plan to ensure vehicles moving to from the site is maintained?
Thanks. Yeah, so we've been alerted to this by local residents and local councillors of localised flooding on Cleve Road. We have flood risk consultants that are working with us. Drainage and flood risk is their realm. So the fact that this has been noted by our residents will be something that's passed on to them. The ultimate intention is that any development would not increase flood risk beyond what's there at the moment, and certainly will pass on the comments about Cleve Road to them to take into account for any of their proposals and recommendations.
Thanks very much, Chris. Question, if I may, from Karen to Nev. Why was the decision made to build an HQ in a residential area rather than an out-of-town site where new custody facilities could have been included and where the challenge of parking noise and blue light traffic would not have been such an issue? A smaller police station in town could have provided the community link.
So just checking that question, James. It was why didn't we do it out of town where we could have had a custody facility as well?
I'll rephrase it in two parts, perhaps.
Okay.
This is from Karen. Why was the decision made to build an HQ in a residential area rather than an out-of-town site where new custody facilities could have been included and parking noise, blue light traffic, perhaps less of a suspicion?
Thanks. I'm tempted to actually ask the Chief Constable to answer that one, only because he was intimately involved in finding a site, and my involvement has been after that. So, Gavin, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a number of aspects to this question from Karen. I mean, we went through an extensive site selection process, and this site at Leatherhead was by far and away the best available one to meet our future ambitions. I think I've said a couple of times, I don't think there exists in Surrey such a perfect site that would be able to do everything. So it's about basing our design to get the best we possibly can out of this location, hence the sort of campus idea, the wanting to be part of the local neighbourhoods and so on. And I think it's important to recognise that it's only part of our overall estate strategy and way of working. So yes, there were alternatives. The future of custody provision, and I noticed there was another question about walking custody, is a separate discussion entirely as well. I mean, we've got renovation programmes that we've completed at Staines and will be completed at the custody site in Guildford. And we're actually in discussions with colleagues in Sussex about the provision on the east to give that flexibility there for spillover when we've not got walking as a backup, as it were. So lots of intermoving parts, but I'm really confident that this was the best site selection and we're making the best of the site now that we've got it.
If I could say, I've been involved too for years. We didn't have much luxury of choice, it's fair to say. A suitable site at a price that we could afford. They don't grow on trees, and we were quite lucky, I think, to get this site. In fact, a number of times we nearly lost it because the buyer was looking at other bidders. Was quite a lot, but we hang on in there. And we finally acquired it, and it is of course on employment land, although it's bounded closely by residential properties. It is classed as employment land in the Mole Valley District Council's local plan.
One last question for Mo, and then perhaps to David, just for a wrap up, if I may. So, Mo, the question is: this is a great, or comment, this is a great opportunity to create local supply chain opportunities for businesses in Mole Valley and Surrey as part of the procurement strategy, and to build in local employment and skills development training opportunities. Any comments on that?
Yes, James, thank you. Part of the very rigorous selection process that we've just been through to look to get a contractor on board, part of that tender process was around some qualitative questions and what we wanted the contractor to address, and a very big part of that was around social and economic value. So we do very much want our contractor, and we scored our contractor, and the winning contractor is going to provide as much local employment, use the local supply chain as much as they possibly can, and very much look to provide apprenticeships and give back to the local community. So it was a massive part of the contractor selection process.
Thanks very much, Mo. Nev, to you, and then David for a final wrap up, perhaps.
Thanks, James. So I just want to say thank you to all of you that have taken part this evening, for taking the time to dial in, and also for the questions that you've given us. Some great questions there, and some good food for thought for us. Just a reminder that this has been recorded. We're going to put it up on our website. So if you do speak to anybody or we want to refer back to it at any time, you'll be able to do that. If anybody missed it, they'll be able to see it. And you will have an opportunity as well, having registered, to give feedback on this session, and also on the programme, should you so want to. We will be doing other sessions like this as part of our engagement with you in consultation. So if you do have any feedback, please pass that on. So I'll pass back to the Police and Crime Commissioner just to close. David.
Thank you very much, Nev. I think you've pretty well said it all, but I'd like to reinforce what you said. Thank you very much indeed to people for tuning in and submitting questions. Sorry we weren't able to answer them all. I will answer one more. Will there be a dedicated police residence liaison officer during and after construction? Yes, there will be. It's essential that everybody knows what's going on throughout this process, and so we'll do that. So I think all it needs to say is thank you again. We will come back to you to other questions. Please don't hesitate if anything more occurs to you, and to let us know. So with that, I think let's wish you a happy evening. Cheerio.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.